Welcome back to Open Line. I'm Carrie Sharp, joined by Clint Kelly from the Kelly firm, talking about medical malpractice. That's what Clint specializes in. It's what you do every day, day in, day out. We have Cindy on the line. Had some great questions tonight. Cindy, what's your question?
This little girl told me that's a family friend that she went to the emergency room and that a lady there before was an elderly lady, had bodily fluids. When she sat down in it, she didn't know it was that they didn't clean it up, and she sat in it.
Sat in what kind of fluids?
Bodily fluids from an elderly lady that would been in there previous before her.
Oh, God.
Yeah, certainly gross, but was she injured? I guess that's the question.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, how long do you go get tested? Because, you know, it was an elderly lady, and then she went next day, and there was a witness to it. She next day met with a hospital administrator, and they act like it was no big deal.
Well, it's a big deal from the standpoint of cleanliness or lack thereof.
Sure.
And it's a big deal to anyone who expects a hospital to be clean. In terms of whether you can have permanent or lifelong problems for it, I'm having trouble reaching for that and making that connection. But you know, I can only imagine, and that's I can't understand why hospitals just aren't cleaner these days. I don't get it.
You know, it brings up, we've done stories before, and when I was in Louisville, we did stories about how staph infections are so prevalent through hospitals.
Yeah.
And you're so likely to come out with an infection from going in there for something else.
It's crawling with them, Carrie. And I mean, some hospitals are worse than others. I
Sure.
know locally which ones have that reputation.
You know, it had that thick pad that you put over a bed, you know, that absorbent pad thing,
Sure.
and then all they had done is put a clean sheet over it. And she sat down in it, and she had to change her clothes and go wash off in there, and then they act like no big deal.
That's just, to me, is gross. And I'll tell you what, if I were a family member or a patient, I'd leave. So I'm out of here. That's inexcusable, and those are the types of things that make people want to sue.
Sure. What is the tip-off to, you know what, I think I need to call an attorney, this may be a case? What are the things that start to add up?
Yeah, the number one thing in my mind, like I said, is the major medical mistake and that causes a major medical injury. You got to have that injury, because there are mistakes out there. There's bad care, there's bad cleanliness, but does it cause a major medical injury? And more often than not, it doesn't. And it's hard for patients, hard for potential clients to understand that a lot of times I don't take a case because I can't connect those two together and make it a case that's worthy of going to court on. Because juries, they don't compensate people anymore unless it's just a tragic case.
Really? That surprises me, because you hear about these juries that'll give you millions and millions for spilling hot coffee on yourself. But you're saying that's just not the case anymore.
Hot coffee case was 1992.
Was it that long ago?
Yeah,
really?
We're 25 years removed from the hot coffee case. Hot coffee jurors, in my experience, aren't out there anymore.
Why? Why do you think that is?
They're just jurors of tightwads now. They expect, they have a high demand for the kind of proof in these cases where they have to be absolutely convinced the doctor or the healthcare provider was wrong, and they have to be convinced that it caused an injury that would not otherwise have occurred. When I say convinced, I mean clearly convinced. I mean, the burden of proof is just tipping the scales. Well, jurors now expect you to tip the scales down to here.
Do you think that is specific to medical malpractice cases, because we put so much faith in our healthcare providers?
I do. I think it's that. I think it's been years and years of drilling into the public's heads that there are too many lawsuits, that doctors and hospitals are unfairly targeted in all of our communities, that we're running off doctors and hospitals because of lawsuits, which is just completely false. But people have that embedded into their head, and so eventually when they get on the jury, that's what they're thinking is, there's this poor doctor over here who's being sued, and here's this money-hungry patient over here, and fighting against that bias is very difficult.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, we have WJ on the phone with us tonight. Good evening. What's your question?
Yes. Are you hello?
Hello, we're here for you. Give us your question. Go ahead and ask.
Okay. I was in a local hospital here in Nashville, and I had open lung surgery and multiple surgeries, throat surgeries, and on and on. But my question is, when I was discharged, I don't know what they call this, but they call it a lifeline, and they left it in me. It was in my chest, and the IV strings were hanging down, and when we left there, and I was discharged. They wrote me out, and my wife took me down to a local drugstore. She went in and got my prescription filled. And after doing that, she got back in the car and noticed him hanging down. So we were right down the street from St. Thomas. So we went to the chest pain center and walked in the ER. And I asked to see, they had my surgeon page to come downstairs. Well, they wouldn't do that, but they took me right back. I had all the bracelets and stuff were left on me. Well, they got me back there in a wheelchair and all, and wanted to take me back up to the 7th or 8th floor, whatever floor I was on. I was in there about 2 weeks. And then they commenced to cutting all the tags and bracelets and all that off. I said, "What are you doing?" They said, "You can't have these on you." So when I got up there, my surgeon got there and removed it from me, and needless to say, he did tell me the charge nurse was fired. And this has all been within the past year. I mean, I don't know that I was harmed, but they told me if she had hit a bump or anything, that a bubble could have went through that thing. It's what they put in you when they put you to sleep in surgery, and they called it a lifeline.
That's right. He could have died from a bubble in the veins where the it sounds like a PICC line. He calls it a lifeline, but it's a line that stays in you. You can feed medications and other type of things down there that the patient needs. But there are a lot of cases that I look at, WJ, where there was negligence, clearly negligence, but there's not going to be any lifelong major medical harm. And I don't take those cases because I can't win them. No one can win them. Juries don't compensate in those cases. And so it sounds like, fortunately, with the charge nurse being terminated, that there was some type of punishment involved so that something like this wouldn't happen again. But these are the types of cases that I get from time to time where I can't do anything for the patient, even though I know that that was a product of bad care.
That is crazy. I mean, someone was having a very, very bad day on the job. Their brain was completely elsewhere when they were supposed to be taking care of this man.
Right.
Wow, unbelievable. Let's go back and talk about the tip-offs and when, because we're running out of time here. When should people say, okay, I only have a year, I need to do something?
Yeah, well, take for example WJ. I mean, he knew something wrong had been done, and he did the right thing by calling. And he said this all happened within a year. I suspected I'm not the first person he's called about this, but patients know, family members know when there's been bad medical care. I mean, you almost can sense it. You can see by the way the healthcare providers are acting, or the way that the patient's not improving like they should, or there's it seems like there's a lot of documentation going on in the room. That's a tip-off. And what I always tell people is, if you think that's what's happening, you record things, video things. And if you need to get the patient out of there, do everything you can. But if you can't get the patient out of there, then do everything you can to make sure that things are charted, that things are properly done. Check and make sure the right medication's being administered, until you can get to a point where you can contact a lawyer, assuming that the patient has a downturn or crashes, and can have the case evaluated.
Okay.
But do it soon.
Yeah, good words of advice there. Okay, we're going to take another quick break. We will wrap things up coming up next. Stay with us.